New sights, new sounds. Today in the Colombian Andes, roof of the world in South America. Bogota, capital of the Republic, one of the world's fastest growing major cities, sets the pace for Colombia's economic and social development far into the future. Yet ever mindful of a rich tradition left from its Spanish colonial past. In the Gold Museum remain the symbols of its more ancient heritage, that of a pre-Columbian culture. History tells us that the Spanish explorers sought the gold to be found in the New World. Thus came about the fabulous legend of El Dorado, thought to be a golden kingdom beyond the Andes. Little did they know that the treasure did, in fact, lie buried there. How prophetic was the golden but empty dream. How heroic its realization in the Colombia of today is a story rooted in geography. The northern Cordillera widens into the region of Antioquia, renowned for its coffee-growing plantations, industrial centers, and thriving cities in a fast-growing nation of free peoples. Much as in the days of unattainable El Dorado, the rugged Andes mountain ranges, walling off city from city, region from region, remain the economic, social, and geographic fact of national life. The Andes are weather makers. On their towering slopes, warm, moisture-laden Pacific winds ceaselessly drop a watery burden. Over 20 feet of rainfall a year. Here, in the rainforests of the Amazon River basin east of the Andes, strange new sights and sounds come to a region once inaccessible, except to roaming Indian tribes, and thought by the early Spaniards to contain the site of the mythical Golden Kingdom. The modern story of the Putumayo region, with thousands of Colombians participating, begins in the 1940s. After 20 years of arduous work, the second chapter opens when two North American oil companies join forces to take the big gamble. The first producing well brought in 1963, Orito number 1. In a few years, in the Orito field alone, there will be more than 30 producing wells. Oil is where you find it. Its potential worth compares with that of the golden dream. But it is of little or no worth until it can be delivered to the marketplace. In 1966 begins the initial stage, plans for the Trans-Andean pipeline route. Thought at first by some to be an impossible dream. From the beginning, the activity of the petroleum companies spurs the economy of the remote Putumayo region. From lowland jungles on both sides of the Andes to fog-enshrouded heights, Colombian engineers and surveyors actually pace off almost every foot of the right-of-way. The year-long survey of the Trans-Andean pipeline route. From Orito, in a series of steep ascents, the pipeline will climb from one to another of 4 pump stations to the top of the Andes, over 2 miles high. Then down through 4 pressure-reducing stations to the tank farm at the port of Tumaco, where tankers will drop anchor to take on the Colombian crude. Next, the land rights must be arranged. Across the 193 miles stretch 1,000 private holdings, all requiring agreement with each property owner for right-of-way. Don Manuel of Nariño knows the land along the route of the pipeline, as well as do the surveyors.
Buenas tardes, señora.
Buenas tardes, mucho gusto.
Vengo a hablar con usted sobre el oleoducto.
Vamos a ver.
Camine, vamos para mostrarle el sitio de la finca. Entonces vamos a charlar allá para mirar la finca.
At the same time, down in the coastal lowlands, the townsfolk of Tumaco experience sights and sounds quite new to them. Ships of many registries unload supplies and equipment. Millions of dollars worth, mainly steel pipe, 12,000 tons per ship. Machinery and spare parts, and massed ranks of special vehicles marshaled on the docks to make ready for pipeline construction. Pipe begins to roll out from Tumaco to supply depots along the right-of-way. Already, the construction crews have improved the provincial roads, shoring them up against the heavy loads. Every trip is tough. Drivers must ease 50-foot tractor trailers onto steel scows, brought in to cross swollen rivers. These Colombian drivers are tough, but they welcome pit stops at 50-mile intervals along the route to take on fuel. But on the big job of moving pipe, even these mammoth trucks call for help. On steep and slippery grades, the main trouble is mud. Mud that never quits. Even at 11,000 feet, there is no timberline. only mud. Finally, in the bracing air of the Altiplano, high tableland of the Andes, the pipe arrives and awaits the needs of pipeliners. Base camps are built at intervals along the pipeline route, each with complete living quarters for the pipeline construction crews. Colombians, with their own ways of doing things, try in small ways to make the North Americans feel at home down here in the province of Nariño. Swamper to accountant, engineer to administrator, 90% of the pipeline jobs go to Colombians. Pipeliners commute daily to work sites by copter, the largest civilian helicoptering operation ever, expertly piloted and maintained by Colombian crews. Snaking through the mountains in several mile-long spreads, work moves forward according to weather and terrain. At times, progress slows to a crawl, where in the jungle areas the ground is covered with spongy, muskeg-like moss that will not support the weight of heavy equipment. In this difficult terrain, dozers do well to make 50 feet of right-of-way in a day. To get traction for the heavy equipment, an old road-building technique is used, rip-rapping, where logs are laid as a base for an all-weather throughway of rock and gravel hauled up from riverbeds. Pipeline engineers are used to rip-rapping swamps, Louisiana to Indonesia. But southern Colombia is the first place they've had to rip-rap mountains. By such a method, there can be access roads over which to move massive machinery and equipment up to the pump stations. Work goes on. Problems abound. Landslides erase days of work in minutes. Tumbling pipe and bulldozers to the bottoms of canyons. Under these difficult operating conditions, cats run out of fuel in a short time. In sections where access roads are impractical to build, supplies and equipment are airlifted to the construction sites. Of all the tools and machinery used in building a pipeline, the helicopter is most unique. Without it, the oleoducto would still be but a dream, and the rich Orito oil field would still be locked away like the fabled El Dorado in the jungle. Of the sights and sounds brought to the silent Andes by the oil companies, none were more strange than the spinning, chaffing rotor and its thunder. Now, everyone in Nariño and Putumayo is used to the whirlybirds, bringing everything from coffee makers to bulldozers. Atop Rio Sucio Canyon, the pipe has been strung. And the 42-foot joints are bent to fit the tortuous terrain. Along the pipeline route, 6 rivers must be crossed and more than 50 bridges built. Halfway down the Pacific slope, a raging mountain torrent rushes seaward through the area known as El Cielo Roto, the broken sky. Here, the rain just never quits. When the dinner bell rings, duck for cover. And what's better than a cutting torch for heating up the beans? After lunch, in the land of the broken sky, cats buck the muck as they get on with the work to be done. Mountains, men, and mud. Across the Andes on the eastern slope, these men are making it every foot of the right-of-way. Men, mud, and mountains. Here at the top of the world, clouds cover the peaks over 80% of the time, 4 days out of 5. This, at dawn, is the grim, rugged job of building a pipeline in the Andes. And 12 hours later, at sunset, the men are ferried back to their mountain camps. No 5 o'clock whistle blows here. Down from the mountains, the pipeliners work their way to the flatlands and welcome the warmth of tropic sunshine. First come the trenching machines. The coating and wrapping machines follow with the precision of elephants in a circus parade. Front porches make excellent box seats for an exciting spectacle. Most of the way from here to the Pacific, the pipe runs along the Tumaco Highway. At the Tumaco terminal squat 4 storage tanks to hold some 1,000,000 barrels of Colombian crude. From these tanks, the last joints of landline are strung and fitted together. While out in Tumaco Harbor, the sea line is submerged, kept straight in line by the beam of a ruby red laser which suddenly dims the moment there's the slightest deviation from the true course. When a welder is working around the bevel joint of a 36-inch diameter pipe at top speed, he's said to be really burning that blue. Held firmly in position, the lay barge extrudes the sea line right down the slot. And the Andean pipeline comes at last to the tanker loading anchorage. In 1969, only 6 years since the discovery well was brought in at Orito, Colombian leaders down from Bogota and representatives of the North American companies joined the Tumaco community in celebrating a red letter day. At last, the business end of the pipeline can be coupled to the fittings of a tanker bound for distant markets of the world. As pumping starts, comes the moment of life, the flow. Hundreds of thousands of barrels per tank ship. Crude oil from wells beyond mountains in a land once dubbed with a magic name. Over and across the Andes in southern Colombia, the oleoducto today remains a new sight. Scars on the land will soon be covered. Nature already grows a mantle of green at the very spot where it all began. Hidden away in the rainforests of Putumayo, a small refinery produces for local use. The Orito pump station boosts the crude oil up the first rise of the Andes' steep eastern wall. Higher up and still higher range 3 succeeding pump stations, all manned by Colombians who know their jobs. In the rarefied atmosphere of the improved mountain roads, the oleoducto is fast getting to be just part of the landscape. Remote, unseen, except by few, 4 pressure-reducing stations slow the surge of the crude in its race down the mountains to the Pacific. With the opening up of new and fertile regions by the pipeline's all-weather access roads, hundreds of pioneers come from distant provinces to begin new lives. As the petroleum industry continues exploration and development in rural areas, villages and provinces once remote find it easier to make for themselves new economic, social, and cultural progress. Today, all along the oleoducto, there's a feeling in the air, summed up in the name one homesteader gives his cottage: El Porvenir, the future. New sights, new sounds in the Colombian Andes, roof of the world in South America.